right. Well, thank you all for joining me. My name is Michael Willett. This is our BU Alumni Career Webinar, Elevate Your Resume, How to Break the 7-Second Barrier. I'm a member of the Alumni Career Engagement Team for the BU Alumni Association. Today's webinar is offered to our 385,000 alumni, as well as our current students. And this is all around the world, as we saw. We have people coming to us all over the country and all around the world. Throughout your career, BU is committed to helping you define and achieve your professional goals. We aim to do this by providing everyone with access to a series of valuable programs, tools, and communities. In addition to this webinar series, one of our most exciting resources is BU Connect, which is an online community where you can network with students and alumni from the BU community, form mentoring relationships, join interest groups. It's a great way to stay connected with BU, and that's at buconnect.com. There's almost 33,000 members of the BU community on there right now. Just a few housekeeping notes for today's session. As I mentioned, this is being recorded, and we will make it available to people after the fact. It will also appear on our on the BU alumni website, bu.edu/alumni, where there's going to be a lot of questions, I think, for today's session. So we are going to wait until the end of the main presentation to do questions. So please do enter them into the Q&A, which you'll find in your Zoom kind of toolbar. And I will be monitoring that throughout the event. I'm excited to introduce our speaker for the day. This is Deb Jancourtz. Deb is an Assistant Director of Career Communities for the BU Center for Career Development, where Deb acts as a career counselor for students and alumni, in addition to leading workshops and programs on everything from resumes, cover letters, interviewing skills, networking, and more. So Deb, I'm going to hand it off to you, and I will be working on the slides here, but I'll let you take it from here.
Super. Thanks, Mike. Hello, everybody from all over the world. I'm Deb. My last name is Jancourtz, pronounced like tennis courts. I've been at BU for almost 15 years, and I love seeing all of you students and alumni from all over the world. I work at the Center for Career Development, and I just want you to know that we see every student and every alumni, no matter what school or college you attended while you were at BU. So I want to let you know that our services are open to you for the duration of your career. So if you need anything from us, you are welcome to use the CCD Career Services. And our appointments are on Handshake, and all alums are invited to make appointments there. We have about 7 fabulous career counselors who are all very, very competent to help you with, kind of, as Mike says, elevating your resume to be, to be the most efficient, accurate, and get you your interviews from those resumes. So some of the services we provide are obviously resume and cover letter reviews. We have workshops that are also open to everybody, all alums all over the world, and those can all be found on our website, which is down at the bottom of this slide, bu.edu careers. We have individual career sessions where you can chat with one of us one-on-one, virtually, or if you're in town, in person. We're open Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. I work one day to 6 for folks who want to come online or in person after work. And we really kind of try to tailor things to get the most of you involved with us. Career education means anything from writing a resume, a cover letter, negotiating a job offer, salary, writing maybe a rejection letter that you don't want a job, interviewing. We have lots of platforms to help you with all of these activities. And if you want in-person guidance, we offer individual sessions for 1/2 or 1 hour for folks all over the world. We have mock interviews. We have a mock interview tool called VMock, and that's available to you and alums as long as you're 2 years out. After 2 years out, we'll probably need to meet in person, or you can use some other tools offline. So you're also welcome to come to any of our career fairs, and folks do that from all over New England anyway, and those are usually held. We just held one in October, and we'll most probably have another one in the spring. So that's a little bit about us and our services. And again, we're open to all alums from all schools and colleges, but of course you are free to use your own school or college if you have your own career center. Okay, so today we're going to focus on your resume, and we're going to look at the overview of your resume, how to format your resume for best results, the content or what you're actually saying in your resume. And then if we have time, we'll actually review a few of your sample resumes that you submitted to Michael. I want to also say that I think at this point there are over 130 folks on this call. So I am going to be talking pretty generically about resumes. Since I have not had the opportunity to meet all of you personally, a lot of my remarks are going to be general. And you might hear me say quite often, it depends, because it will depend on you, your experience, where you are in your career. So some of my comments might be geared more generally and some might be more specifically. So just bear with me. I'm trying to be a little bit more general. And of course, you're welcome to contact us at the CCD for more specialized help. Okay. Okay, so I know this might be a little basic, but I really do want to say, what is a resume? Because a lot of folks think it might be a way to express everything about yourself. And it's not. It's really a marketing tool. And that's the purpose. It's to market you most effectively. And it's an advertisement about who you are and why you are a good candidate. So it's going to be part of your brand. And I know that this word can be overused, but in today's world, resume does equal part of who you are and your brand. So what are the goals? The goals are to introduce yourself, showcase and market you. You want to catch the employer's attention. And I think as I have 6 seconds, Michael has 7 seconds. The point is, employers take anywhere between 6 to about 15 seconds to review your resume in the first pass. And you really, really want to get through the first pass. And today, more than ever, with the advent of AI, we have something now that we call the ATS, or the Applicant Tracking System. And I'll get into that a little bit more in a couple of the slides. But the object of your resume is to get an interview. Sometimes it might not be to get an interview, it might be to get into graduate school. So there can be some, Deborah, speak English. There can be some exceptions, but the majority of time, your resume is going to be used to get you an interview. And that's what we want to concentrate on. Okay, so I'm including this slide because I don't know how many international folks we have on the call, but there can be some confusion between resumes and CVs. A lot of my international students call a resume a CV, but in America, we actually differentiate the two. And again, I didn't know how many international folks I'd have on the call, so I just want to make a differentiation here, that a resume in America is usually 1 to 2 pages long, and it's mainly used in industry. And we really want to have your education, your skills, obviously your work experience. If we have room, some leadership and activities, volunteer experience, and perhaps project experience, especially if you're in one of the STEM fields. So that's the very basic overview of a resume. Now, a CV is different. There is no length limit for a CV. Typically, they're about 3 to 10 pages. They're mainly used in research and academic positions. I think lately I've seen some of those the CVs also used for doctors and lawyers, but mainly used in academia and research. And again, there's no limit, and you want to absolutely include your education, teaching, research experience, community service, volunteer, publications, conferences, and presentations. So it can be longer, but in America, when we search your resume, it's usually the 1 to 2 page version. Okay, I think this is pretty standard. I just wanted to point it out. Okay, so now we have our ATS, our Applicant Tracking System. So this system is used to filter resumes, okay? I think I've heard the vast majority of larger organizations, your Fidelities, your Googles, your IBMs, your Microsoft, are all using applicant tracking systems. I've heard, and I don't know, these are statistics and they're all, optics can change statistics, but I hear that about only 20% of resumes get through the applicant tracking system. And employers use them because there is probably not enough time to review all of the resumes that come in to larger employers. So what do we want to do? We want to beat this system. So let's look at the next slide. Okay, so these are some very common sense ways that we can beat the ATS. Okay, keywords, keywords, keywords. You're gonna use keywords that are customized for the job you are applying for. So this is really important because the main reason you're gonna get bumped out of the ATS is your words will not match the words on the job description. So I'm not saying you should have 10 different versions of your resume, but I do want us to start with a vanilla version. And then if you're going to apply to a certain type of job, use that posting and maybe put in some of those key words, if at all possible, into your resume so that it will get moved on to the next phase. If you don't have actual skill at a job with some of the key words, you could put it up top in a summary about qualifications. So that's not necessarily saying you have it on a job. It's saying you might have had it in volunteer, you might have had it in a civic organization or whatever, but please try to make sure that your keywords are customized for the job posting. You also want to use some of the standard section headings, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. Avoid fancy schmancy stuff, images, graphics. That the ATS software has difficulty parsing images, graphics, and non-text elements. You want to ensure that your resume is getting read, so please use plain text and standard formatting. I kind of like to say commonly used fonts are like, ones you probably know and use: Arial, Times New Roman, Calibri. Avoid unusual and unrecognizable fonts. And please, unless you're in a very creative field, don't use a lot of color, because even if they print out your resume, most of the color is going to gray out. So if you're like using a purple or something, it might look like gray. Keep it simple, sweetie. All right, keep it simple. Okay, so there's just some points about how to beat the ATS. Okay, so when you're getting ready to write your resume, gather the following info. I know most of you probably already have resume versions, but make sure you have your dates of employment be accurate. I've had folks not get job offers because their dates have been off when they do reference checks, and they've said that, maybe they've worked longer, but they made a mistake or a typo. Make sure your dates are accurate. You make sure that your addresses and contributions are also appropriate. I'm saying addresses because you might need to get in touch with some of your previous employers for references. So make sure when you're writing your resume, now's a good time to think about getting at least 3 references of probably former employers, because most folks don't like to use their current employer unless they know you're looking. Education, absolutely your degrees. Dates is a big question. I like if you put on dates for at least 10 years back. If you have more than 10 years back, it depends situation. I'm not going to say ageism doesn't exist in this world because it does. And in some fields, it's more prevalent than in others. Sometimes it's great to have more experience and it's great to be a more mature candidate. But in many fields and areas, we will be seeing ageism. So, you know, if you're applying to a position, I saw in one of the sample resumes, and the gentleman said they have 15 plus years of experience in a certain field, but then they left out their dates on their education. So I'm thinking, well, maybe they've got 30 years or maybe they've got 15. I don't know. So in that case, if you're already stating I have 15 years, I would put down your date that you graduated to be synchronized to what you're saying in your summary. So you want to be synchronized and you don't want to give the impression that, you might have, a lot, further back degrees than you do. It's a very delicate, nuanced situation, and I'm happy to discuss it with everybody that needs to. Yeah, so you want to include your honors, your certifications. Obviously, as you get on in your life, you might not want to be putting down your GPAs and things like that because you'll be getting more experience. So you're going to need that valuable real estate to put in other information. Skills and accomplishments, we want research, fabulous. Publications, we can also sometimes fit on a resume if we don't have extensive publications. If you want to submit a resume and you have many, many publications, what I like to do is say selected publications and then see attached addendum for full list. So it won't be right on your resume. Okay? So again, that's another situation we can chat about because if you're if you're a PhD, for example, and you're looking to work in industry, you probably want to submit a resume and not a CV, but you might want the potential employer to have access to all your publications. So again, that's another, it depends. Okay, projects, key projects that you might have worked on. And then I love it if you can put in any kind of civic activity, volunteering in the community. It makes you a human, right? I know that most of these resumes are going to go through, ATS systems, but I still love to use the human element whenever possible and, give the potential employer something kind of personal about you. I wouldn't go on and on. And I once did a resume for the mayor of a big city in the United States, and he had on like 6 lines of things that he did for activities. I'm like, they're never going to think you're at City Hall. All you're doing is Greek dancing and attending this and attending that. So we pared it down. But I do like having a human element. And it could be interest too. It doesn't have to be volunteering. Okay, so let's talk a little about the formatting, how it looks. 1 page is ideal. I'm fine if you're on 2 pages if you've got important things to say about yourself and the experience. So you need your name, your email on the first page and any page after that if you're going on 2 pages or if you have a CV. Because in a worst case scenario, if they print it out, they lose another page, they're not going to see how to whose resume it is. I mean, I think that's only happened once in my life, and it was when I worked at Polaroid and somebody's resume got detached, but they eventually found her and figured out how to connect it. Okay, 1/2 inch to 1 inch margins is very appropriate. Black ink, again, I'd stay away from any of the colors and no graphics. I know a lot of, if there's international folks on the call, I know in a lot of countries like Germany, etc., you will include a photograph, but not in the United States. I like 11-point font. That's my favorite. If you've got less to say, 12-point font is fine, but since you're mostly alums, I think we probably need the 11 points so we can fit in more information. I would also make everything the same size font except your name. This is important because Sometimes I see folks, they have 16-point fonts for their headers. And that means like we are missing getting in like maybe 3 or 4 extra lines of content, which is much more important. So please keep everything the same size font except your name, which I think could be a couple of, maybe 16-point font, a little bit larger, and all caps in your name so it stands out. Okay, use bold, use italics, use caps, but don't use all of them at the same time because it'll confuse the reader. I think this is worth saying. Your resume is written in reverse chronological order, which means your most recent experience is first. There is an exception. It depends on this one. If, for example, you taught maybe 10 years ago, and since then you've been working in business, but you want to return to teaching, what I would do is then take your teaching experience, put it on top as your first entry, and say relevant experience, so that the date might not be the most recent, but you are showing the potential employer that you have that experience, because the top quarter of your resume is your most important real estate. So you want to get your most important information that you want the potential employer to see up at the top of your resume. Now this, if you're further out and you've got more experience, this would not include your education because that would come at the bottom. But if you've just got a new master's degree or something, and you want to tout it because you now want to use your MBA, put your education up top. So again, that's one of, it depends, but it's usually reverse chronological order, and you will usually, if you're an alum, be having your experience up at the top and your education on the bottom. Also save as a PDF, and make sure you use your name when you save it as a PDF, and don't put down, like your birthday, 3/9, 65 or something. Put down your name when you save it as a PDF. So again, it's another way for them to recognize that it's you. Okay, cool. All right. Now, unless you're in a very creative field, graphic design or something like that, please don't use a template or a design resume. Okay? This cannot be read by our ATS software. It's confusing to the reader. People don't know where to look. It's not the best use of space. And as I mentioned, photos are not used in US resumes. Okay, so I think I just did mention, like, if you're in a creative field, these prohibitions may not apply. If you are in a creative field, I highly recommend you do your creative resume, but you also do more of a format like we're talking about, more of the standard format, again, if it's going through our ATS software. Okay? All right, I think this is pretty self-explanatory, and everybody, I think Michael is going to send you the slide deck so you can all read. And the absolute main sections, I think, are going to be your headers, your experience, your skills, and your education. A lot of the optional centers are on the right. I do highly recommend, if you have military service, to put it in. I have a lot of international students, especially from Korea, who say, oh my God, I'm now late 20s and I'm just getting my degree. And I'm like, well, what happened? Oh, I was in the military in Korea. I'm like, fabulous. Add that to your resume. It shows responsibility, it shows leadership, it shows teamwork. So please, please think of those optional sections as things that employers will really take a shine to. Okay, I should probably say something about languages here. A lot of folks have foreign languages or languages other than English. Please make sure that you put your proficiency level of your language on your resume. So if you are truly bilingual, put English, French bilingual. There's lots of steps. I would say beginner, intermediate, conversational, fluent, bilingual, something like that. If you're confused, you can email me at djj@bu.edu, and we can figure that one out. But I think it's really important to have your level of proficiency because a lot of jobs right now, we're international. I know a lot of folks, around the world speak English, but it's always great to have, proficiency or knowledge of other language. Certifications, licenses, professional affiliations, all those things that, can be optional. And you'll get those from Michael when you get the slides. Okay. Again, this might be more for our international alums, but please leave off religion, marital status, birthdays. References are okay to put on a CV at the end. You typically find your references on the end of a CV, and those could be 3 or 4 folks, and they're usually academic and or professional. You don't have to put references available upon request on a resume anymore, a resume anymore, because that's obvious. Use that special space for more content. Yeah, take off political affiliations. Do not put any salary information on a resume. I see that and I really like, oh, as soon as it's down in writing, it's a number that's going to be hard for you to beat. No social security numbers. Again, this is pretty standard. I think a lot of us in America know this, but for some of our international folks, I just wanted to make this clear, what to leave off. Okay. All right, so let's get to our headers. Obviously, the first header is going to be you. So we're going to put in your name. We're going to put in your phone number. You don't necessarily have to put in where you're from. Please don't put in street addresses anymore. I'm just really concerned about this world in these days. I wouldn't put in my street address. So I'm Cambridge, Mass. I'd put that in. I kind of like to know where someone's, hailing from. Put in your email, and then if you've got your LinkedIn, put that there. If you've got a website, of course, if you've got a GitHub or a portfolio, that will go right under your name. Okay, make sure your name is bold and caps because we want you to stand out, but don't make it 25 or 35 size font because you're going to be missing out all of that good real estate to put in your content. Okay? All right. So the next section, again, it's going to be, Deb's going to say it depends. It's going to depend. But the next session might be your experience. So you're always going to have your position title, the name of the organization. Lots of folks leave that out. Don't forget to put down, Boston University or Liberty Mutual, where you work. Start and end dates, very important, and make sure they're accurate. Location, folks like to know where you're working. And then, of course, your content, your bullets, the meat of your resume is going to be your contributions and your key achievements. And I said Deb will update, but Deb didn't update because she just thought that she could use these slides. But absolutely put in all of your bullets, and you're going to start them with action verbs. And I'll get to that in a little bit. So the next experience under your header is probably going to, next section under your header will most probably be your experience. Okay.
Sorry, missed that one, Deb.
Nope, the next one is good. Okay. All right, bullets, bullets, bullets. I am the resume police with bullets. I am very harsh on you, but it's for your own good, because this is where the, ATS and everybody else who's looking at this resume is going to check for your keywords. So you want to have bullets. You do not want to write paragraphs about yourself. That's your cover letter. So your bullets are going to be about your experience. So on the left, I have Metza bullet, responsible for after-school activities for international elementary school children. Please do not write responsible for in a bullet. If it is on your resume, I know you're responsible for it. We need that space for other language. No ATS is going to pick up responsible for, so please leave that off. I know lots of folks do it. It's not bad. We just need space for more important keywords. Okay. So that's one example. To make it into a really good bullet, we would start with an action verb. Developed curriculum and organized 2, quantity 2, after-school arts and programs for 50. Okay, again, when you put in a number, any number over 10, you can just write the number. first grade international students to aid in English speaking skills development and community. Okay, so that's one bullet on the left, which is fair, to the bullet on the right, which contains numbers, quantifiers, and expands what you did. Okay, so go through your own resumes and try to see if you have quantifiers, qualifiers. I like to use the example of NASA. I forget where they were going. Maybe they were going to the moon. I'm making this up. But they said, we can do this faster, cheaper, and better. Okay, so go through your bullets, see if you did something faster. Did you automate a filing system which made, filing documents 100% faster? Did you save anybody money? Cheaper? Did you, better? Did you improve something? So faster, cheaper, better. I like to go through every bullet and see if you can. Sometimes you can't. That's fine. Don't stretch it to make it have to be that way. Just if you can, faster, cheaper, better. And then, you'll remember most of the ways that you can improve your bullets. Okay, that's just me talking. I make that up. So anyway, but I think it's useful. All right. Okay, so some other sample bullets would be sometimes additional experience. So for example, if you basically had a sales resume, but you also had some additional experience when you were at BU, we might split that up and put additional experience. That's a potential other header. So here again, we have tutor 50 plus students and what languages they've used and the fact that they critiqued and graded all students within 4 days. So that's a great outcome. Also, this is a little known fact that 99% of people won't know, but I grew up in New York City public schools and they drilled grammar into our heads. Do not say tutor over 500 students. It's tutor 500 plus students. Okay, that's for any of you grammar folks out there. Nobody's not going to call you in if you say over, but the absolute correct way is to say the plus sign. Okay, same thing with, this person was a clinical research recruiter down at the New York Blood Center, contacted 300 people by phone. That's a great number to evaluate eligibility, et cetera, et cetera. So numbers, quantifiers, faster, cheaper, better, when possible. Okay, thank you. Okay, again, accomplishments. So that goes back to the faster, cheaper, better. These are just some examples about, how to add your accomplishments. Some folks have an accomplishments section up top. We find that employers don't always love that because it's like, well, where did you do this? Where did you do that? Employers like, and this is from employer panels we have, they like to tag your experience to where you worked. I like a skills section or a qualifications section. I like to fold the accomplishments into the bullets. Okay, developed innovative strategies, exceeded quotas, better, cheaper, created ideas, promoted or increased, demonstrated effective leadership. So then I guess somebody worked at Google in San Francisco, and they're going to give you some bullets about how they increased a conversion rate by 35%. They executed 16 email marketing campaigns for the launch of 4 new digital projects, et cetera, et cetera. So those are some ways that they're putting sample accomplishments embedded in their bullets. Okay, thank you. Okay, all right, we have lots and lots of action verbs on our website, bu.edu careers. This is just a sample, so it's a great cheat sheet on our website, bu.edu careers. You can go to the resume section, and we'll have the headers, accomplishments, improvements, and you can find lots and lots and lots of action verbs. You could also ask Lady Google. You can just put in action verbs for resume, and they will give you tons of action verbs. So please, please start each bullet entry with a strong action verb. My bias is to avoid things like worked with, aided, helped. Every time I see helped, I feel like somebody makes coffee. I don't know why. But make sure that you've got strong action verbs. Do not start your bullets with your job titles because you'll already have had your job titles. Lots and lots of folks do that. So if you were a program manager, please don't start your first bullet with program manager for. I already know that. I see it. So say managed, 5 programs for whatever. Okay, so lean on these action verbs and don't be afraid to switch them up a bit and try to stay away from the weaker action verbs like helped or aided or worked with. Okay. Oh, okay. How to quantify. So numbers that, are great to include. How long did the project last? Any percentages, any number of people in a group, especially if it's over 3 folks, I would add the number of people supervised again, and maybe if you're in research, sample side of research. Accomplishments to think about. Did you bring in new business? Sales revenue? Did you increase profits? Did you save money, right? Faster, cheaper, better. Did you have an increase in page views? So these are just some thoughts about how to start thinking about accomplishments. Okay, I know I'm talking fast because I'm kind of concerned about the time, but this is all being recorded, so if you're missing any of it, we've got it all recorded and you'll get the slides. Okay, I'm not a big proponent of hard skills and soft skills, but that's how the world talks about them, so I will use that language. So hard skills tend to be software, actual languages, foreign languages, lab skills. Lots of folks have a section for skills, and I love it because this is where you can really get those key words in that you might not have been able to put in an actual work experience. So maybe you did a lot of Excel in college, but you haven't touched it in a long year, and it might not be in your experience for your bullets. You could put it down in the skills section. And then any languages you have, and then, try to think about at what level. I'll tell you something funny. I had a student come in once. I speak French. And at the bottom of his resume, he put French, fluent. So I greeted him in French. I started talking to him in French. He was just looking at me like, I don't know what she's talking about. I said, hey, you said you speak French. It's on your resume. He goes, I don't speak French. I said, well, it's there. He said, oh, my girlfriend put that there. I was born in Haiti. I'm like, please do not put anything on your resume that you cannot in person substantiate. You will get found out. It will not be fun. So make sure you don't oversell yourself, but I think I find more that people undersell themselves. So just make sure that you can be kind of accurate in how you are promoting or branding yourself. Okay, again, don't use soft skills. Please prove them in your bullets. So, you might not want to say under, a litany of like 50 skills up at the top, teamwork, collaboration, put them in your bullets. Supervised team of 4 people, etc., like that. Okay? Okay, so these are some examples of your soft and hard skills. Again, you guys can read, so obviously the ones on the left, we really want to encourage you to put on that resume, and the softer skills, I call them I am skills. I am good at negotiating, I am good at delegating, I am good at active listening, I am good with written, verbal. I like to call them my I am skills. And the hard skills, I like to call my I can skills. So put your soft skills, which most of the world calls them, put your soft skills embedded in your bullets, okay? All right, education, which we've all got great education from being students at BU. So obviously you're going to put your education, your school attended, your location, your full degree and major, and most of the time you're going to have your graduation date. You may want to keep it out under special circumstances, and if you're concerned about that, I'm happy to talk to you offline, or any of our other career counselors can chat with you about that. Optional GPA, especially the further away you are from school, it's less important to have your GPA. You might need the room, or I call it the real estate, for more content of your bullets. An ATS system is not going to care about your GPA, but they are going to care about the fact if you know pivot tables. So we really want to think about what we're putting on, because we really want every word to be something that somebody is going to use in their decision about whether or not to call you in. Okay, so relevant coursework is great for my younger alums. Don't put the course number, nobody's going to know that, but just pick courses that are relevant to where you want to be going, not where you've been. And I would like to say here too that make that a point of your entire resume. Think about where you want to be going because you want to showcase that more than where you've been. So you want to play your words, etc., your bullets towards the next employer and make sure that they can see that you have the skills and the experience or the interest or whatever to do that job. Study abroad. I always love study abroad because I love languages, and I think it's a great way to show that you're human and that you've got some nice experience culturally and with diverse people. So I personally like that, even if it's one line on your education sector. Okay, so that was an example of how to put in the education. All right, research and publications. I think the research is pretty obvious. I think we looked at that a little before. The publications, again, if you're using a resume and you've got 3 or so publications, I'm fine if you want to have a 2-page resume if it doesn't fit on 1 page. I mentioned that if you have many, many publications, you could put selected publications that might be most important, again, to where you want to be going, and then say, see addendum for complete list. I'm fine with that. Okay? So again, the publications will most likely be on a CV. Okay, whew. So, in summary, you really want to start each bullet with a strong action verb. We've got the action verbs on our website, bu.edu/careers. Indicate the tools, techniques, and skills that you used, and specify the amount and frequency of what you did and produce. Avoid repetitive language. I've seen resumes that the first 5 bullets are lead, 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 lead. Switch it up. People aren't going to read it after that. Avoid repetitive. Leave out unnecessary words. You do not need the words and the in a resume. Those are unnecessary. Proofread, 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 and have others read it to avoid grammatical and spelling errors. I know there's lots of tools that you can use too, but a lot of times some of those slip through. So please avoid any of those errors. And just know that I want you to have a resume that you feel comfortable with. You can talk to 10 different people about resumes. You will get 10 different opinions. The only opinion that matters, or the opinion that matters the most, is yours, because you are going to be defending that resume in hopefully the interview that you're going to get. Okay, so take it with a grain of salt. Everybody's going to give you input and information, but just make sure that you feel most comfortable with the document, because like the student who came in and said that they spoke French or whatever. I mean, that was a real extreme situation. You're not going to do that, but just make sure that you feel comfortable with your document and it Deborah, it represents you and how you want the potential employer to see you. Okay, I think that's it for me chatting.
Thank you, Deb. That was great. I feel like we could easily add another hour to this session. But
Do folks have questions?
yes, so I think let's prioritize some of these questions because there are quite a few. So let's try to we'll try to get through as many of the questions that came in as we can and during the time. Um, I'll start. I'm going to go through the Q&A and take a look through the chat as well. David had asked if we were going to mention, and this is something Deb, you and I had briefly talked about, but the use of AI like ChatGPT in developing resumes and cover letters. Can you kind of briefly talk about what your thoughts on the use of generative AI?
Okay, okay. So generative AI is here. It's being used all over. When I was driving in this morning, I just heard a teacher from North Carolina talk about how it's being used in her 7th grade classroom. It's here. People are using it. At the CCD, yeah, we do recommend that you use, generative AI, ChatGPT or whatever. We don't want you to use it as your sole source of what you're writing. So we want you to be responsible, ethical, and mindful of how you're using it. I know I use it sometimes if I have to write something, but use it as a guide because employers are also using it. So, you want to make sure that if you're using generative AI, you're using it to brainstorm, to think about, but your final product, we want it to showcase you and your brand. So use it mindfully and respectfully and responsibly, and it's here to stay. So yes.
Yeah, I always say that it can help with like a solid first draft, but then you have to take
Yes,
it and
absolutely. Absolutely. I agree.
um, Taylor had asked if it really matters what font you're using, if the ATS is going to be stripping it and putting it into another format anyway.
Well, that's a good question. No, but I never had that question. I just say, or we at the CCD say, stick to some of the more common fonts. But that's something I can Google later or whatever, because I
Yeah.
don't think that it would
My,
matter. But again, I don't know for sure. I would just say stick to some of the fonts that are more commonly used. Again, unless you're in a really creative field and you're showcasing something or other. But then again, like I said, have a more of a vanilla standard style resume to accompany it.
right. My feeling with that is that ultimately there is going to be a human looking at your actual resume that you
Mm-hmm.
submitted. So if you submitted a resume with, Comic Sans or something like that, or Papyrus, then that's not going to look good for you. Um, Sakshi asked, is it preferred to use an online editor such as LaTeX, which I actually haven't heard of, or would using MS Word be okay? Um, have you heard of
Again, I think
LaTeX?
anything that might help, but don't use it as a final, as your, like I think Mike says, use it as a draft or as first draft, but don't use it as your final go-to.
Mhm. Um, Anne asks or says, I've been told that older applicant tracking systems can't handle PDFs. So is it better to submit in Word or Google Docs? Is that outdated advice?
I would just go with the PDF. I don't know, Mike, do you know about that or?
Yeah, I haven't heard that. I've my my advice and what I've told to students and alums in the past is to stick with PDFs. The
Mm-hmm.
danger with Word docs and Google
Yeah,
Docs is the
we're
formatting can get all wonky.
wonky. Yes,
So
I
I would
agree.
always stick with PDFs. I think these days the ATS uh,
Yes,
applications can handle PDFs.
yes, I agree.
Um, Kim, hi Kim. Kim did our last alumni webinar just recently. Kim asks, what are your thoughts on a functional resume rather than chronological format,
Okay,
particularly
I
for
didn't
career
even
change?
get into that. That is a whole nother session. I was trying to decide whether or not to include it, but to be honest, I use them. I think that we have heard from the vast majority of employers that they do not prefer them. I like to go to what I call a hybrid resume. I hope I'm not getting too much in the weeds here, but I like to go to a hybrid resume. So if you worked at Liberty Mutual for 10 years and you've had different functions like operations, human resources, I like to put the employer down and then I like to put the functions under the employer. Because the most we hear from employers is there's a disconnect of where did you do this and for whom. So I do sometimes, like I have a private practice too. I sometimes in my private practice will use a functional, but it's usually billed as a hybrid resume. Well, I'll put the employer and then I will put the functions on the employer because so many folks like to attach it to employment. Thank you for asking that. I was debating whether or not to add that. So I just didn't want to get folks more confused. But again, if anybody on the call would like to chat about that, you can email me and you can send me your resume and we can look at that for your particular situation.
Thank you, Deb. David is looking for clarification. Earlier, you were mentioning that usually you do reverse chronological order for your
Hmm.
experience, but sometimes you can put an older experience first, like if
Hmm.
like a career change or that sort of thing.
Absolutely, yes.
But in general, it should be reverse chronological.
Yes, yes. So for example, now this was an actual example. I had someone who had taught about 10 years ago, then went into sales and wanted to return to teaching. So instead of having the potential employer look at the 10 years of teaching, what we did is put relevant experience up top. So it wouldn't necessarily be in chronological order, but it would be the first thing the employer saw where he'd see that she has relevant experience for that job.
So create an actual like header called relevant
Header, relevant
experience.
experience, or even
Mhm.
say teaching experience, or
Yeah.
if you're going, returning to sales, sales experience or research experience. Because then again, I'm just correcting myself. I'm thinking about those key words. Relevant experience is not going to, get through that ATS, but teaching will. So maybe we should be more specific if we say relevant instead of relevant. We should say education experience or sales or whatever, research. Yeah, great
Great.
questions.
Let's see. Jessica asks, how should progressions or promotions within the same company be formatted? She's seen
Fabulous,
company, then
fabulous.
list of titles and dates, or
Yes.
other versions of that.
Perfect. I don't know if we'll get to it, but one of the resumes I chose to review actually had that situation. So this particular alum worked at a company, um, I don't know, let's call it Boeing. I don't know. Worked at Boeing for 10 years, and he had significant job changes. He put Boeing down 6 different times and parsed out when he had each position. I would much prefer if you list Boeing once up at the top and say Boeing, yada, yada, Seattle, Washington, and then put 2014 to 2024. Then, under each specific job, right next to the job title, in parentheses, you would write Chief Operations Officer 2022 to 2024. Say what you did there. Then Operations Specialist 2020 to 2022. Say what you did there. So have the entire time you worked at Boeing and the name Boeing once and on one line, and then your specific jobs under it with your dates of that particular position in parentheses. I think once you put it down 5 or 6 times, people, again, we're beating that 6 or 7 second. They might just look real quickly and say, oh my God, this person's worked at 6 different places in 10 years, forget it. So I would rather have them see Boeing 10 years. Wow, great employee, doesn't jump around, and look at the promotions they had within. Because otherwise it looks to me, again, this is when you can talk to 10 different people. I'm saying I'd rather see Boeing once and then your particular positions with the parentheses about when you had each. I know this is hard to see if you're a visual person, but again, I can, I think we can send you a copy of something like that if you really need it.
We've had a few different questions asking about some form of employment gaps, whether it's because of a switching careers or because of taking time off for family. Can you talk a
Yep.
little bit about like formatting wise, how would you deal with a gap
Hmm.
like that?
Yeah, again, I don't think we'll have time, but another one of the resumes I chose to review did have an employment gap. And the person was saying they had taken time off to care for a sick parent or relative or whatever. I mean, we are human. Things happen. You are mostly alums. You will have life situations occur. I am a big proponent of putting it right there on the resume. So you could say 2023-2024, you know, you know, cared for elderly parent in hospice or something. And then you could also say during this time was active in volunteer or whatever organization. So we are human. I do not think we should hide that. I think it's worse to say there's nothing for this like 2 or 3 or whatever year gap than to say just something very, very straight on the resume. I used to say put it on the cover letter, but we are not guaranteed these days that people are even reading cover letters because the vast majority of employers, like I had a conference of a sorts with biotech and pharmaceutical folks. We don't have time to read cover letters, Deb. So we want you to get notice. We want you to get an interview. So I'm suggesting putting it on the resume. Don't make a big deal out of it. Don't apologize. Just state in one succinct sentence what the situation is. Again, you might talk to different folks. You'll get different opinions. You decide what's best for you.
So I know we're coming up at the hour mark. Deb, are you able to stay on for a few more minutes?
Yeah, then I've got to jump, but I can take 1 or 2 more questions.
Okay, yeah, and I'm sure other people have to jump too, so we'll just do one or two. I saw a couple questions about dealing with there was one question about how do I handle a title change where the job function stayed the same? So basically just a title bump, it sounds like. Is there something that you would
Yeah, I
recommend?
might just use the newer title, not to confuse people.
Okay,
If
so
it's the
keep
same,
that for
if
the whole
it's
time.
the same content.
What if it's like from program manager to assistant director, let's say, but
Yeah, you could
jump?
just, like I was saying before, you could put, program director, parentheses for the years, and then the other position, parentheses, right next to each other. That's fine. If the job responsibilities stay the same.
Okay. There were a couple questions about using a summary and or objective
Yep,
sections of
yep,
the
yep.
resume.
I I love summaries. I love bullets under summaries. Again, keywords, keywords, keywords. So I wouldn't use one, again, another one of those resumes I chose to review online. Maybe we should just have a session to review resumes online. But one of those resumes I chose had a summary section, which took up about half the page, which people are not going to read. So again, we want to beat that, the 6 seconds, they're going to go right over that. But if you put skill summary and you list 5 or maybe 10 at the most, 2 columns, 5 and 5, again, use your I can skills or hard skills and take off your I am skills or your soft skills. Don't put communication, writing, leadership. Put down your strong or hard skills up on the skills section. That would be a great thing to do rather than a long summary. If you want to summarize 1 or 2 situations, like maybe just saying on an objective, and I especially like objectives if you're changing careers or pivoting, then I would say objective is to transfer my presentation and sales experience to teaching at the high school level. I especially like an objective for a career changer. If you're not changing careers, what I like to do is put your title right under your contact information. So you'd have your name, your contact information, and then financial services specialist rather than objective, because right there you've got your moniker. But if you're a career changer, I personally like just one sentence of like, well, why is this coming to me? I don't understand it. To transfer, and I like using that word to transfer my XYZ skills to you so I can help you.
All right. Well, Deb, I know you've got to jump, and I know a lot of
Yeah.
our guests who are watching have other meetings coming up. So unfortunately, we're going to have to cut it off. I know there's additional questions. I'll take a look and see if I can maybe get some answers in writing to send out later. Before we go, I just want to mention finally that the BU Alumni Association. We host events all the time. Hopefully, you're hearing about us from our newsletters and from online postings and whatnot. We have a few events coming up that I'd recommend checking out at our events website, bu.edu/alumni. You'll find a link for the events there. November 12th, there's a session that's specifically geared for our students and younger alumni called Figuring Out Finances. Personal Finance 101. I think that's going to be a really great session. November 13th is Social Connection in Working and Retirement. So if you are in retirement or in kind of getting toward it, that could be a great session to check out. On November 14th, we're doing an alumni career resources chat, which is mostly kind of a Q&A style. There's a very short presentation. That's mostly just a session where you can come and ask questions about the various resources that are offered through the Alumni Association in terms of career resources. We can point you towards specific resources at the Center for Career Development. We'll also talk more about if you have questions about BU Connects, our online platform. November 15th is a session called the Creative Core, Creative Thinking to Make Change Easy. So a lot of great content coming up. Hope you'll check it out and register. Thanks everyone for coming. This has been really great. And thank you so much, Deb. I will be following up with everyone with a link to the recording, and I'll send copies of the slides as well as a few of the other resources that Deb had prepared. So thanks everyone for coming, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Bye. Thank you.
Take care. Have a great day wherever you are.